my privilege to take the opportunity to welcome to everyone to the Anne Arundel County House Delegation meeting. We will start by introducing our guests, or at least the ones I can see. So I see that we have Congressman Brown, Anthony Brown, on the call this morning. I also see Adam Spangler, who represents Congressman Brown's office. I always like to acknowledge our senators from Anne Arundel County and who may join us at a particular time. So there's Senator Brian Simbonaire, Senator Ed Riley, Senator Pam Vital, Senator Sarah Elfreth, and of course, Senator Jim Rosapep. So thank you for joining us this morning. I do see we have several folks lined up to testify, and so we will acknowledge them as we get into that. So we will begin this meeting as we always do with the Pledge of Allegiance and prayer, which will be led by Delegate Kipke.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And if you now join me in prayer. Lord, make me a channel of thy peace, that where there is hatred, I may bring love, that where there is wrong, I may bring the spirit of forgiveness, that where there is discord, I may bring harmony, that where there is error, I may bring truth, that where there is doubt, I may bring faith, that where there is despair, I may bring hope, that where there are shadows, I may bring light, that where there is sadness, I might bring joy. Lord, grant that I may seek rather to comfort than to be comforted, to understand than to be understood, to love than to be loved. For it is by self-forgetting that one finds. It is by forgiving that one is forgiven. It is by dying that one awakens to eternal life. Amen.
Thank you, Delegate Kipke, for leading us in our prayer and Pledge of Allegiance. So having introduced our guests, and I know that Congressman Brown is very busy, we're going to turn it over to Congressman Brown for his remarks.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank you and the Vice Chair for your leadership of an extraordinary delegation. I want to thank all the members of the delegation for your diligence and your commitment this session. I'm watching from afar, although I have been in Annapolis testifying on a few bills, but from afar, watching the work that you're doing. And you've got a really busy and what seems to be a productive session in progress. And I certainly wish you the best for the remainder of the session. It's good to join you this morning to discuss briefly some of the progress that we're making in Congress on behalf of Anne Arundel County and its residents. 1 year ago this week, President Biden enacted the American Rescue Plan. And we set aside $350 billion for state and local government to continue a red line for me because we had not provided state and local relief assistance during the pandemic until that time. And that included $5.8 billion for Maryland and more than $112 million, I should say. When you're on Capitol Hill, you start talking billions and trillions. But it's $112 million for Anne Arundel County. And we provided $130 billion to help safely reopen schools nationwide. And that included over $2 billion for Maryland K through 12 schools. And after 1 year, we see over 200 million Americans are now fully vaccinated, 6.4 million jobs were created, and our kids are back in the classroom. But we didn't stop there. At the end of last year, you'll recall, we passed the landmark bipartisan infrastructure bill to rebuild our nation's aging roads and transit, bridges, and a lot more. We made the largest federal investment in public transit, passenger rail, bridge and highway construction, and clean drinking water, the largest investment in our nation's history. We expanded high-speed internet and affordability through our communities, and we invested in green energy and electric vehicle infrastructure. After more than 2 years of advocacy, we did secure funding to match what you did 2 years ago in the General Assembly to fund Metro or WMATA, both the bus and the Metro rail service. And we also created a first of its kind program to reconnect communities through infrastructure investments, and particularly those communities of color who've been divided due to past poor infrastructure policy. Some would say it was discriminatory policy. This week, the House passed, and it was just 2 days ago, funding for priorities both nationally and here in Maryland. Unlike in Annapolis, where you can't leave in April unless you pass a balanced budget, we are well into our fiscal year that started October 1st, but we didn't pass our appropriation until this week. Passed out of the House. It's now with the Senate. It included assistance for the Ukrainian people. And I want to thank the General Assembly for divesting the pension in Russian assets. We, as you know, also gave the president greater tools. We've made a clear statement that we do not and will not import Russian energy. And we're going to increase trade sanctions, and we've given the president more authority to do that. But we also invested more in education, in jobs programs, and finally, after 5 years, we're reauthorizing the Violence Against Women Act. Included in the legislation is $17 million in community project funding that I was able to secure for Anne Arundel and Prince George's County residents. Of the $17 million, we worked closely with Stuart Pittman to secure $8 million in earmarks for Anne Arundel County. And that's going to be funding to help transition Anne Arundel County buses to an electric fleet. There's money to construct a new teen center in Brooklyn Park, and also to fund summer career readiness programs for our youth. And as part of the House Armed Services Committee, I continue to advocate for the support that we provide to our military installations, and that included this year $558 million in new military construction projects across our state. We faced roadblocks and setbacks, but we aren't backing down in our efforts to invest in the social needs of our communities and families. I continue to advocate strongly to deliver universal pre-K and to expand the child tax credit, as well as lowering healthcare costs, the cost of prescription drugs, and to invest more in clean energy. I know that families continue to be worried about keeping a roof over their heads and putting food on the table. So I'm going to fight each day to make sure that our constituents get the support that they need. Our work with the Biden administration and with state and local government level. And I'm confident that the Anne Arundel County delegation will deliver on a vision for a better Maryland. If we're really going to make progress on gun safety and public safety, transportation equity, healthcare, and more, our Maryland has to do what it's always done, which is to lead. So I've certainly strongly support the General Assembly's efforts to legalize cannabis. And if we need to send it to the voters for referendum, so be it. To reform our criminal justice system, to get dangerous ghost guns off our streets, and to protect the rights of Marylanders. There's more work to be done to tear down the barriers that hold too many Marylanders back, whether it's healthcare or housing, and climate and education and policing and in our criminal justice system. But I've got full faith that the Maryland General Assembly, led by the Anne Arundel County delegation, is up to the work and will lead that fight. So I look forward to our continued partnership as we truly build back a better future for everyone. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, for giving me an opportunity to speak a little bit about what's happening on Capitol Hill and the benefit to Maryland and Anne Arundel County.
So Congressman Brown, thank you for those remarks. At this point, I will ask my colleagues if they have any questions that they'd like to ask. I see Delegate Bagnall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And it's more of a comment, but I did want to say thank you for all the work that you've been doing, helping our constituents who got sort of caught in the crosshairs of the unemployment debacle. And thank you for bringing back the Violence Against Women Act. That's been a large concern. But I'm probably going to eventually wear out my welcome with our Maryland delegation because I make the same ask every time. But I really want to keep it on the radar that making the PUA program permanent, and also bringing back funding for the shuttered venues program, because that was such a lifesaver for so many in our arts and entertainment community, which often go forgotten in times of crisis. So I just wanted to put that on the record again. I know that you've been working diligently to make those programs permanent, and I just wanted to ask once again to make sure that our gig workers, our sole proprietors, our independent contractors aren't forgotten as we're looking at how to modernize our social safety nets.
So I'm going to be candid with you, and I will start by saying that I've supported a number of measures on Capitol Hill to support particularly those venues that were shuttered during the pandemic and that are having tremendous difficulty reopening. Often when you lose patrons and members and customers and clients, it's hard to bring them back because in 2 years of a pandemic, lifestyles have changed, foci have changed, and relationships have changed. And so I was and continue to be a strong advocate, for example, for the Gyms Act. There are so many small spas and gyms, unlike sort of like the LA Fitness, and I'm not taking a shot at LA Fitness, that have a lot of capital backing and were able to weather the pandemic. A lot of these small spas, most of which are women owned, have struggled and may never return. Having said that, here's where I need to be candid with you. It's not my opinion because I support continued relief, but there's not an appetite on Capitol Hill right now for any additional pandemic relief for a variety of reasons, some political, some budget, economic, and what typically the conversation turns to is, we have sent the states and the counties significant resources. And while I know that, there's probably bipartisan support to provide tax relief to Marylanders, we've got tremendous unmet needs, right? We've got a blueprint for Maryland's future. We have businesses and families that continue to struggle trying to recover from this pandemic. And I understand the desire to provide tax relief, but there are still unmet needs, both that existed before the pandemic and were exacerbated during the pandemic, and those that were created as a result of the pandemic. And remember, the venues that shuttered, sure, it was the virus, but it was a government actions and decisions to close our economy. And I do believe that we still need to support those businesses. And at the state and local level, there are resources. Maryland has a surplus. I think today all of us were reading in the newspaper, the surplus is reported to be even a little bit bigger than what we thought. So I would encourage the Maryland General Assembly to use that surplus, to use those federal resources to deliver more relief where necessary.
Thank you very much, Congressman.
So not seeing any other questions in the chat, Congressman Brown, I want to take the opportunity to thank you for coming before us today. And I want to thank you for all that you and the rest of the Maryland delegation are doing to support Marylanders. We know that we couldn't do a lot of things that we do without the support that we receive from all of you on Capitol Hill. You all have done yeoman's work in terms of ensuring that we've received the additional resources that we have and you listed the project, so I won't rename those, but it's just been incredible support. And we've expressed the same sentiments to both Senator Cardin and Senator Van Hollen when they've come before us. I also want to thank you for all that you guys are doing to support the efforts to support our men and women abroad that are serving. Obviously, that's something that's near and dear to my heart, having served in the Middle East, multiple tours, as well as Europe, and understanding the relationships of being there to support our allies. And because I was in Germany when the USS Cole was bombed and folks came into launch to receive that support. So I just really appreciate all that you're doing there as well. I invite you to hang around. I know that your schedule is very busy, but to the extent that you want to kind of remain with us for this delegation meeting, we invite you to do that. And if there's anything that we can do here in the General Assembly to help you all with all the things that you're doing on Capitol Hill, please let us know.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have about 5 minutes, so I will hang around. And on behalf of Rupertsberger, Sarbanes, and Hoyer, let me say that we feel that this is a real a privilege and honor to be able to represent Anne Arundel County. So thank you for giving me an opportunity, Colonel.
Thank you, Colonel. So with that, we're going to move into our voting session. The first bill that we will be voting on will be House Bill 1193, Anne Arundel County Licensing of Food Establishments Waiver Open Air Markets by Delegate Saab. Delegate Saab, is there any additional information you'd like to provide before we move into the actual vote? I know there is an amendment and there is something from the Public Health Subcommittee that needs to be heard. So I'll go Delegate Saab and then Delegate Bagnall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, there is an amendment. It's just a clarifying amendment that we drafted yesterday. So we have to vote on that first. And Matt, do you mind? I mean, I can explain it, just really clarifying that who is the governing body in Anne Arundel County that will enable this bill. But if maybe Matt can explain it a little bit more if I haven't explained it to the delegation.
Matt, please go ahead.
Maryland Department of Health and the local and the amendments, when determining whether to issue a waiver, the Department of Health shall request and consider any recommendation of the governing body of Anne Arundel County, which is the Anne Arundel County Council.
Okay, I don't know if everyone got all of that, Matt. I think the first part we didn't pick up. So if you could restate that, please. No
problem. So yeah, the local Department of Health will be the one making the determination of whether to issue a waiver for each of these health establishments, these food establishments. And the amendment states that when determining whether to issue a waiver for each of these establishments, the department shall request and consider a recommendation from the governing body of Anne Arundel County, and that is the Anne Arundel County Council.
Okay, all right, thank you for that. Delegate Bagnall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the subcommittee, the Public Health Subcommittee met twice on this bill and had robust discussion. Our concern, because there was opposition to the bill from MACHO, which is the Maryland Association of County Health Officers, about having varying standards from county to county. So Delegate Saab did amend the bill to clarify that this would still go before the county council, before the health department would even be involved, which meant that there would be an entire hearing process where all stakeholders could be heard on the record. And so we felt that this struck a fair balance, because it is only authorizing legislation. It does not compel the county council to act. It does not further compel the local health department to act. And with that, I am happy to move the amendment.
All right.
Second.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, Sienna, could you take the roll?
Vice Chair Bagnall,
Yes.
Delegate Barnes, Delegate Bartlett,
Yes.
Delegate Carey, Delegate Chang,
Yes.
Delegate Chisholm,
Yes.
Delegate Henson,
Yes.
Delegate Howard,
Yes.
Delegate Jones,
Yes.
Delegate Kipke, Delegate Kipke, Delegate Lehman,
Yes.
Delegate Munoz,
Yes.
Delegate Pena Melnick,
Yes.
Delegate Saab,
Yes.
Chairman Rogers.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, on the amendment 206613, the vote is 13-0. I'm sorry, 12-0 with 3 absent.
Okay, thank you. Is there a motion on the bill as amended?
Move the bill
Mr.
as
Chair?
amended.
There's a question, yes.
But before we take the vote, I just wanted to make the delegation aware that we did reach out to MHO with the amendment. They are still in opposition, but as I stated, the subcommittee did still feel that this was a fair balance. But I did want to make the delegation aware.
Okay, no, thank you for sharing that. I believe I heard a motion to move the bill as
Second.
amended. And it's been properly moved and seconded. Sienna, please take the roll.
Vice Chair Bagnall,
Yes.
Delegate Barnes, Delegate Bartlett,
Yes.
Delegate Carey, Delegate Chang,
Yes.
Delegate Chisholm,
Yes.
Delegate Henson,
Yes.
Delegate Howard,
Yes.
Delegate Jones,
Yes.
Delegate Kipke, Delegate Lehman,
Yes.
Delegate Munoz,
Yes.
Delegate Pena Melnick,
Yes.
Delegate Saab,
Yes.
Chairman Rogers.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, the vote is 12-0 with 3 absent, and the motion passes.
All right, thank you, Madam Secretary. So I noticed in the chat, we had a couple folks join us for at least one. Pete Barron from the County Executive's Office, so just want to acknowledge him. Next, we'll move to House Bill 749, Natural Resources.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
can I
Yeah,
make a motion? I'd like to make a motion to make this a delegation bill.
is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Mr. Chair, I don't think did you get a chance to call out the bill number yet?
No, I did not. I mean, I think so for clarification, Delegate Saab, were you referring to HB 1193 or were you referring to HB 749?
1193. I thought we were still on 1193.
Okay, so you're asking for make it a delegation bill or provide a letter of support?
Well, I mean, obviously, I need a letter of support for the committee, but I'd like to also make a motion to make this a delegation bill.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All right, it has been moved and properly seconded. Sienna, please take the roll.
Mr. Chair, you have some hands.
Okay,
Could we get the questions before we take the vote?
sure. I can't see all the hands the way my screen is set up, so.
I think you have Delegate Henson followed by Delegate Bartlett.
Okay, Delegate Henson, followed by Delegate Bartlett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If this is the appropriate time for comment, I just wanted to thank the bill sponsor and the Public Health Subcommittee Chair and Council for the delegation as well for working on the amendment for the bill. I really felt like it was collaborative, and I know that District 30A has a number of establishments that could potentially benefit from the policy. So I just wanted to thank everybody that was involved. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Delegate Bartlett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to understand. So essentially, you're making a sponsor change, delegates? I'm not sure what you're doing by making a delegation bill. Is there any process that needs to happen with that to make it a delegation bill? Beyond, I mean, we're going to do the letter of support. So are you saying that you would remove your name and it will be coming from Anne Arundel County delegation?
Yes, I mean, that's typically what we normally do when it's local bill. We just vote on it and we'll just make it a local delegation bill.
And is there any, so I guess my question is for Matt, Council Matt, is there an amendment that happens with that, or do we just make our vote and we're done? Oh, and are we voting on that as an amendment? That's my question, really. So we're going to be voting on an amendment to make it a delegation bill.
Essentially, yes. 8 votes in the affirmative will make this a delegation bill, and that'll change the sponsor to the Anne Arundel County delegation.
Okay, gotcha. Just wanted to make sure I understood. Thank you very much.
Okay, so it had been moved and properly seconded. Sienna, please take the roll.
Okay. For HB 1193 to make it an Anne Arundel County delegation bill. Vice Chair Bagnell,
Yes.
Delegate Barnes, Delegate Bartlett,
Yes.
Delegate Carey, Delegate Chang,
Yes.
Delegate Chisholm,
Yes.
Delegate Henson,
Yes.
Delegate Howard,
Yes.
Delegate Jones,
Yes.
Delegate Kipke, Delegate Lehman,
Yes.
Delegate Munoz,
Yes.
Delegate Pena Melnick,
Yes.
Delegate Saab,
Yes.
Chairman Rogers.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, the vote is 12-0, 3 absent, and the motion passes.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to House Bill 749, Natural Resources Maryland Park Explorers Grant Pilot Program Establishment. Delegate Guyton. I know that there was someone on the line from Delegate Guyton's office. Are there any questions before before I ask if there's a motion on this bill? Seeing no questions, is there a motion on House Bill 749?
Mr. Chairman, move the bill.
Second.
All right, Senator, please take the roll. It's been moved and properly seconded.
On House Bill 749, Vice Chairman Bagnell,
Yes.
Delegate Barnes, Delegate Bartlett,
Yes.
Delegate Carey, Delegate Chang,
Yes.
Delegate Chisholm,
Yes.
Delegate Henson,
Yes.
Delegate Howard,
Yes.
Delegate Jones,
Yes.
Delegate Kipke, Delegate Lehman,
Yes.
Delegate Munoz,
Yes.
Delegate Pena Melnick, Delegate Pena Melnick, Delegate Saab,
Yes.
Chairman Rogers.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, the vote is 11-0 with 4 absent, and the motion passes.
Okay, I just also would like, thank you, Sienna. I would like to share with everyone that if there's anyone that would like to sign on as a co-sponsor, please let Delegate Guyton know. And we will be sending a letter to their delegation. So moving on to our hearings, the first hearing today is for House Bill 1215, Anne Arundel County Fishing Natural Resources Gear. Delegate Howard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair. So Delegate, for the record, Delegate Howard here to present HB 1215. This bill would allow the use of bow fishing in the Anne Arundel County waters, and it's come to the attention of DNR that both commercial and recreational fishermen want to use bow fishing, and because it's a great way to harvest a snakehead, which we know is an invasive species. And I know that we have a couple members from DNR here. With that, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, but I'm sure they would be as well.
All right, thank you, Delegate Howard. Do you have any witnesses that you'd like to call? And just as a reminder, our technology has caught up with the Anne Arundel County delegation, so we now have a working clock. So very appreciative of that. And Delegate Howard, kudos to you for taking the least amount of time possible for your testimony.
Hey, I'm gonna need it on the next one.
I'm sure. So are there any folks that you have that you'd like to call to testify in support of HB 1215?
Not in particular, but I know if the members have any questions. I know that there are members from DNR here.
Right. I see that everyone should have received a letter of support from DNR that was sent last night. So if you haven't had a chance to take a look at that, please take a look at it before we vote on it next week. So next we will be hearing House Bill 1218, Anne Arundel County Natural Resources Fishing with a Hull Seine, and that will be Delegate Howard.
Thanks again, Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, Vice Chair. For the record, again, Delegate Seth Howard here presenting HB 1218, Anne Arundel County Fishing with a Hull Seine. This bill allows the use of Hull Seine net fishing in Anne Arundel County waters and aligns us with all other waterborne counties on the bay. I'm not going to be technical here. I want to leave that to the folks from DNR. I know that there's a lot of watermen and panelists that are joining us. I do want to tell you that for me, this legislation comes from a disparity perspective that I've learned about. You're going to hear true testimony today that the practice of hull seining has been in the use in the waters of the Chesapeake Bay for centuries, and that it is still being used in the waters of the Chesapeake Bay to this very day. The fact is, our watermen, who are more than are just taxpayers, more than just people that provide Maryland with $1 billion economic driver, which is our seafood industry. These are our friends, our neighbors, and community members, and they're not allowed, let me say that again, they're not allowed to fish in the waters of the county in which they reside. You know, and before I move on, I just want to say this. I know there's been a lot of feedback. A lot of people have been involved, and I want to thank every group that has reached out to me, every person that's reached out to me, whether you're a proponent, opponent, here just for technical support of the bill like DNR. I just want to thank everyone for their involvement. Based on those fair and reasonable conversations, I've drafted some amendments. For example, this bill has been amended to exclude hull seine fishing from Hackett Point to Greenberry Point to directly south at Tolly Point. So just to clarify, there will be no use of a hull seine whatsoever in the waters, creeks, tributaries, or inlets of the Severn River, Lake Ogleton, Whitehall Bay. Also, based on these conversations and concerns, I will propose an amendment, which I am currently drafting, to exclude the Magathie River from the furthest most eastern point of Bodkin Point to the Baltimore Harbor Lighthouse, and from the Baltimore Harbor Lighthouse directly south to the furthest most eastern point of Sandy Point, ensuring that Downs Park, Gibson Island, the waters of the Magathie, Pedickery Point, and Sandy Point are off limits to hull seining. I'm absolutely open to and willing to have further conversations with anyone about possible amendments or clarification about the legislation so that as we move forward, we can be confident in the crafting of legislation that is clear in its intent, strong in its wording and punishment provisions, and therefore provides protections for our bay and all the communities and community members that utilize it. And with that, I'd like to thank everyone for their time and the hard work and effort, and turn it over to members of DNR, or I know Julia Howes from Waterman is here.
All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to start with the folks that are testifying in favor of HB 1218, and I believe we have a couple folks who are in opposition. So we'll start with those four, and we'll start with the list of names that I have received. And so the first person that I have, and I would remind everyone, as you see on the timer, you have 2 minutes. So is there a Lou Hyde from Tracy's Landing?
Yes, I am, and I support this bill.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there a Julia Howes?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
I am here today to ask for your support and favorable motion for HB 1218 regarding the hull seine fishery being reopened in Anne Arundel County. We have worked with the delegation to remove both the Severn River and the Magathie River from the permitted hull seine area. Yellow perch is a permitted fishery, which means watermen have to apply to fish for that species, receive tags and quota, and are restricted with current regulations. Once the state limit has been reached, the fishery is shut down for the remainder of the season. This is already managed statewide by Maryland DNR. Haul seines are not the most desirable method of catching yellow perch by watermen. My husband and I are both commercial watermen, license number 1419 and license number 20159. Neither of us have yellow perch allocation. Striped bass is a permitted fishery, which also means a waterman has to apply to fish that species, receive tags, quota, and are restricted with current regulations. There is a set quota for each fishery. My husband and I are commercial watermen, license number 1419 and 20159, and we do not have quota for striped bass. We are two of the watermen that are looking to haul seine for our crab pod business. To give you some perspective, a recreational trot line is allowed to be 1,200 feet, whereas the haul seine net is allowed to be 1,500 feet or only 750 feet in a river or tributary. We would most likely be in rivers, so our maximum length is 450 feet, smaller than the basic trot lines most of the community residents are currently using for crabbing. The watermen are not interested in depleting the bay resources. We are working together with lawmakers and environmental organizations to keep the bay sustainable. Watermen want a sustainable harvest just as much as anyone else. Our jobs and our livelihoods depend on it. We are in business owners providing a product to our customers. With gas prices increasing, our watermen cannot afford to travel outside of the county to fish crab pots, and bait are continuing to increase due to the expenses of running a boat and increasing. There are only a limited
Ms.
number
House,
of watermen that provide the
please
bait
summarize.
we need to crab our pots. We want to pass this on to our family and heritage. We want to pass our business, traditions, and heritage on to the next generation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. House. Next, we have Robert House.
I think I've got it figured out there. We obviously need this fishery in our county. We rely on fish more now for bait than we have been. The clam industry, our prices are going through the roof. We're looking at $130 for a bag of bait now. It's just going to get even more expensive. It looks like as this summer goes on, that price increase is going to be given throughout to the consumer, even just from our crab bait alone, not including gas prices and what we're looking at for this summer. We just need another avenue to catch the bait that we need, so that we can keep going, keep our prices reasonable, and be able to sell our products. It's going to be a major trickle down effect. I think this summer we're already seeing higher import crab prices than ever. And honestly, it's a common sense bill. You know, it's a method that we've used for eons, and we should have it in our county. We shouldn't have to go to other people's backyard to work. The other point of that is we need bait to catch crabs, and if you want to go to your local restaurants and buy local seafood, we need to be able to provide that for you. And honestly, to vote against this bill, I think the next time you go order a crab cake somewhere, make sure you order Asian pasteurized crab meat from somewhere else. If we're not able to provide it from our own county. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. House, for your testimony. Next, we have Ryan Mold.
He's on the boat, so I'm playing you his video.
I'm going to give you some information about HB. Arundel County is the only county in Maryland where the use of a haul seine is prohibited. A haul seine is a highly effective gear method to target a certain species of fish with very little bycatch and a very low mortality. This bill is not asking to use this gear method where current restrictions in locations such as the Severn River where the use of nets are prohibited. We are asking to only use this gear method where commercial fishing is authorized.
Hi, Darcy. These nets is catfish.
So we are asking to support HB 1218, where county is the only county in Maryland where the use of a Hall seine net is prohibited.
All right. Please thank Mr. Moe for his testimony. Do we have Bill Sabero? Okay, moving on to Eddie House. Is there Mr. Eddie House? Okay, so prior to moving on to the testimony in opposition, are there any questions from the members?
Mr. Chair, can we take the clock down so we can see our gallery?
Sure.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Delegate Jones.
should we let questions? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you because my internet here at the
Sure.
MGA.
So what I
Is it
was saying is before we move on to the opposition, I just wanted to offer members an opportunity to ask any questions or make any comments. Then we'll go to the folks that we have in opposition.
Okay.
If there are none, we'll pick up again after the opposition and give folks an opportunity there too.
I just had one question.
Sure.
And this could go to, I want to thank all those who came in favor of the bill, but I just have a quick question for clarification. Is it true that you're allowed to fish these waters now? You're just not allowed to use a Hall seine? Is that what I'm understanding? And anyone can take that.
That's my understanding. I don't know if DNR wants to chime in. Yes. Yeah, that's where this bill is born out of. You can use a Hall seine and fish in any other county in the waterborne county in Maryland. But
No, I'm sorry, Mr. Howard.
Yeah,
My question is, you are allowed to crab in all of this area. It's just this one tool you're not allowed to use. Is that correct?
right, but it's used for bait
Thank
fishing.
you.
Okay. All right, so moving on to, do we have Paul Spadaro?
Yes.
Sir, please. Go ahead.
Okay, my name is Paul Spadaro. I'm president of the Magothy River Association. We've been around since 1946. We represent 30 communities and over 300 members. Today, I worked for many years as a cartographer, and I'm going to make you all cartographers to show you a picture of the Magothy. If you take your hand and look at your hand, you get an outline of a narrow part which goes to the bay and an open part where Dobbins Island is and fingers. But what you don't see as you turn your hand around is fingernails. And fingernails are extremely important in fisheries because, or in this case, they represent the wetlands. And in the wetlands, we have in the Magothy specifically, we have herring, American eel, catfish, white perch, even winter flounder, bay alchives, and striped bass are all nurseries. So these wetlands or the fingernails are extremely important to the health of the fishery lot in the bay. And it's not just the Magothy, it's the Bogdan Creek, it's all these other creeks that have these wetlands. And this type of fishing will destroy the production. And a good example, if you all saw the pictures that I had sent about the yellow perch, in one morning, you could take the whole yellow perch. And MRA has had a long history, 62 years of restoration. In one sweep of the net, you wipe out 60 years of restoration. There is no place in the rivers to have this fishing. You can fish in the bay all you want, but not in the river systems. And MRA, with their 30 communities, and I do appreciate it, put it in the bill, but it's not all about MRA and the Magothy. It's this type of fishing is detrimental to the health of the fishery in the bay. And I strongly urge you all not to vote for this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Spadaro. The next person that we have signed up is Mr. Larry Jennings.
Good morning.
2 minutes.
Good morning, Larry Jennings here. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm Larry Jennings, volunteer with the Coastal Conservation Association, Maryland. And we oppose this bill, even though we're happy that the Magothy and Severn Rivers have been spared. But our problems with this bill is you are allowing a gear type that takes very large quantities of fish at one time. When these fish are in their spawning reaches of the rivers, they are all grouped up in the most concentrated form of the year because they're getting ready to spawn. That spawning brings the life into that river system for the next year with all the young fish that they are depositing in the rivers that hatch from the eggs. And it's a very precarious position because you could wipe out an entire population. These rivers, DNR does not know how many fish are being targeted. Haven't really heard today what species are being targeted. But we do not know how many are in each river system. And if we don't know how many fish we have there, we don't know what a sustainable level of harvest is. These fish all contribute to the ecosystem of our bays, and every river in Anne Arundel County has hundreds of volunteers working in many capacities to help improve the quality of our rivers. We recognize they're impaired in the county, and the volunteers are active and numerous in number, and they do everything from clean stream trash pickups. They monitor the water quality. They map out where the SAV beds are. All these things are going on in these river systems, and this gear type is not used by DNR to be able to
Mr.
judge a
Jennings, please
sustainable harvest.
summarize.
I thank you very much, and I urge the county not to support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your testimony. So at this time, I will ask if there are any questions from members of the delegation. I would like to also note that we have a couple folks from DNR that are on the call. I believe I saw Mr. Bunky Luffman earlier and Mr. Jacob Holtz. So if there are any questions, if we could take the screen down so we could see the members again, ask if there are any questions at this time. Okay.
Two of us have our hands up.
Okay, Delegate Jones.
Thank you. Thank you so much to my colleague and friend, Mr. Howard. We have had great conversations about other pieces of legislation of his that I honestly love. This one, we do see from different sides on this one, I will be honest. And it's unfortunate that Mr. Howard did not speak to me this year on this bill, but here are some of the things that my constituents, along with my seatmate, have real concerns about this bill that is written in large part about the district that I represent. The waterways around District 30A, the majority that's laid out in this bill is in fact here, District 30A. It's filled with commerce, with small business, folks coming into downtown Annapolis, which is the backbone of the economy here. These waterways are also, they're filled with people coming here for commerce. I know last year, many of you remember this bill. We heard from the US Navy and their serious and deep concerns over how this would affect trainings, exercises. Now, while I appreciate there's small changes in this year's bill, very small, and I think it would help the members if we ever got a map of the waterways that would be affected. Luckily, I have a honestly nationally known sailor on staff, and she has tried to follow the lines here, and we've tried to put this together. But I have serious concerns. The advocates who have reached out to me, the constituents, and how this will affect our fisheries. We're taking the food from the fisheries and the waterways here completely out. How will that affect? How will that upend the natural food webs that we have here? I think it's important that the folks who came in favor of this bill, they can continue to fish, but they can't use this one way of scooping up so many fish in one swoop, honestly. Bycatch is a serious concern. And these fragile grasses and the fish here need it. I don't think that they should be disturbed. So my question, sir, in this bill is going to be a technical one. Does DNR have a management plan surrounding the removal of forage fish for which these targeted species will be harvested using these haul sign nets? And is there
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Does DNR have a management plan surrounding the removal? And is there a funding mechanism to then help DNR to monitor and manage this?
So Delegate, and I'm not trying to be the wise guy, but there's a lot to unpack there. And I would just tell you, as far as commerce is concerned, you got to remember that this type of fishing is allowed in Baltimore. I can think of no greater waters where there's commerce being taken place in the waters of Maryland. We did sort of talk about this over the summer in just a very quick conversation, lasts about 30 seconds. We were going to do some type of veterans cleanup or anything. I did let you know that the bill was going to come back, but I did not talk to you afterwards. And quite frankly, and it wasn't out of malice or trying to, it's not, yeah, I know. But because based out of our conversations last year, your concern was about Ogleton and all the waters and tributaries and inlets in that district. And my mistake, maybe I should have reached out, but I amended those out of the bill based on our conversations and concerns from last year. So
well, and thank you, but it wasn't just it was all the waterways. It was the effect on the fisheries. It was the ecological impact, and so anyway. So it wasn't just certain waterways, it was all of them. And there's a reason why this area doesn't have haul seine. This can be used in multiple other places. Here where we have very delicate grasses and fisheries, it will affect Anne Arundel County in a way that we don't know how we will bounce back from. So just really quickly, is there any additional funding mechanism in this bill to ensure that DNR has enough resource police to monitor this new commercial fishing?
Well, it's an existing method of commercial fishing that's used throughout the state. I'll let DNR speak to the specifics, but thank you for strengthening my argument, because we just talked about that this is already being used throughout the state. And from the DNR's own website on a short history of fishing, this has been used since about 1760 that we know of. So that being said, we haven't seen any big effect in this whole wiping out of all the fish and those type of things. And I would proffer to you that the same grasses and sensitivities that Anne Arundel County sees are seen statewide, and this is allowed statewide, except in Anne Arundel County. But I would also proffer to you that DNR, unlike people might want to believe that maybe the Maryland State Police or whoever, DNR is the most powerful law enforcement in this state. They can board your boat. They can go on your property. They don't need permission. So their long arm of the law, I guess, is long. But as far as the funding mechanism, I know that their budget is strong. And I know that they have officers out on the water policing every other type of commercial and recreation fishing the bay wide.
Okay,
this would just be on top of that. So I would, as far as the technical aspects of it, I would ask DNR to respond.
So I'm going to allow Mr. Luftman to respond, and then I see Delegate Bagnall has her hand up.
Okay. Hi, my name is Bunky Luffman. I'm the Legislative Director for Department of Natural Resources. Today I have with me Michael Luisi and Jacob Holtz, who are our subject matter experts on this. So Michael and Jacob, I'll let you chime in on the technical questions that were just offered.
Yeah, so I think I could probably go first, Mr. Chairman, and thanks, Bunky. My name is Mike Luisi. I am the current acting fisheries director for the state of Maryland. And
just by delegation. And rank them.
I'm sorry, somebody else was talking.
Delegate Barnes, I think you need to be.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the fishery that was referred to by members of the industry in support, I believe, and I can confirm with them, that this gear would be used to capture menhaden for commercial bait use for crabbing. Menhaden fishery, if that was the reference from the commercial industry, is managed by our state. We have a quota that we monitor based on commercial harvest reporting. And there are other gears all throughout the bay that can capture very large quantities of menhaden at any particular time. And I'll reference a pound net fishery, which you may be familiar with, which are the staked nets that capture very large quantities. Now, these fish move, they're migratory in nature. And so by taking up fish at one particular time in one particular area, the department doesn't necessarily have a concern about another wave or another group of those fish coming into that particular area again. There was reference to yellow perch. Yellow perch fishery is strictly managed.
So, Mr. Lucy, could you please respond to the question about the funding specifically? And then I'm going to ask if there's additional documentation you'd like to submit to the committee, you can do that. Then I'm going to go to Delegate Vice Chair Bagnall, and then we're going to move on to the other bill that we have to hear, followed by the Mayor of Annapolis, followed by a floor session.
Okay, I appreciate that, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. I'll be quick. So we have a mechanism in place currently to monitor the menhaden harvest. This would not need any additional funding in my mind right now to just add this gear for that particular catch of those species commercially in Anne Arundel County.
All right, thank you for your response, Ms. Lucy. Vice Chair Bagnall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just have a question for the bill sponsor, because we did have a good deal of opposition last year from the Coastal Conservation Association. And I know that you have worked diligently on amending the bill to try and address those concerns. So I just want to thank you and all of the stakeholders that were here. But did you speak with the Coastal Conservation Association about the bill as amended?
I did not, but I did not speak to them directly, but I know that other stakeholders have, and the amendments have come from emails and that I've been email threads that I've been a part of concerning Magathie River, and so as I'm going through this bill and trying to build this bill out and get rid of this disparity, that's where those amendments came from, but it didn't come from a direct discussion with CCA. But I will say this, Delegate Bagnall, I know that Julia Howes has reached out to, and kind of a big shout out to her. She has reached out to every person, and if not every person, darn near close to every person physically, talking to them about this bill and explaining the bill to them and their concern, and trying to alleviate their concerns. And I have to say that would be CCA as well.
Mr.
Right,
Chair, if I could have a very quick follow-up.
No, I'm sorry. We need to move on. We've got the mayor and we've got Delegate Chisholm waiting in the wing. So I want to thank everyone for the testimony. I want to thank everyone for the questions. I want to say that if there's additional information that can be provided before we vote next week, please provide that information to Sienna, and we will make sure that the entire delegation gets the information.
Mr. Chair. Just very quickly, it was brought up.
No, I'm Delegate Howard. I'm sorry, we're moving on. The next bill will be House Bill 1224, Anne Arundel County redistricting, restrictions on unused construction of private piers. Delegate Chisholm.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the Anne Arundel County delegation. I know that the mayor is waiting in the wings, so I'll go as fast as I can. Unfortunately, this bill got conflated last year with some other riparian rights bills but this bill is truly very simple. All it is, it prohibits any homeowners association from arbitrarily and capriciously denying any one person from exercising the riparian rights that have been around for centuries, are codified into our law, are constitutional, and it is narrowly focused on this must require written permission, because this can lead to favoritism, this can lead to discrimination, and it has in the past. And the discrimination happened in one of the neighborhoods that brought this all to me. Homeowners associations are set up for one thing, to provide conformity applied equally. And the problem we're seeing, and the problem we wish to address, is this written permission part of a HOA's covenants. Because it can, in the situation that was brought to me, we have a neighborhood where some people were allowed to exercise their riparian rights, and then some people were not. And in order to get that approved, they had to go to the homeowners association and ask for written permission. Whereas this homeowners association could have given other people in the neighborhood written permission, but said, we don't like you for one reason or another because you're a Yankee fan or you got the wrong color flag flying, and that's a dangerous place, and it's something that we need to stop now from having these homeowners associations do. I do want to clarify what this does not do. It does not change any laws right now with the state, the federal government, the local government, the requirements on permits, on DNR, on MDE, all of those things that would have to be met are still have to be met. We don't change a thing about that. This is narrowly focused once again on that part of a requirement that says you must go and get written permission. And I hope that resonates with everybody on how that could be used in a very nefarious way, in a very discriminatory way. So that's what this bill seeks to do, Mr. Chair. And at this point, I'm just going to yield my time back so that we can acknowledge the mayor. After my guest, please.
Thank you for that, Delegate Chisholm. Do we have Mike Huntley on that's to testify in favor?
Yes, I'm here, sir.
Oh, Mr. Huntley, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Chairman Rogers, Vice Chair Bagnall, and delegation members. My name is Mike Huntley, speaking this morning in support of HB 1224. As Delegate Chisholm said, the right for riparian landowners to build a pier in front of their property has been in Maryland law for 160 years. I'm a riparian landowner. My property extends to the mean high water line. There's no strip of community-owned land that separates my property from the water, like in other communities in the county. My property doesn't abut any community beach area. I went to the county and applied for and obtained a county building permit to build a pier. My community association was fully aware that I had applied for the permit and didn't contest any ownership of riparian rights that I have. I then went and obtained an MDE tidal wetlands license to build the pier. Despite the fact that I had obtained all the necessary approvals from the county and the state, and despite the fact that Maryland law grants me the right to build a pier, the association refused to allow me to build a pier through its provision to provide written permission before construction. At the same time, the current association and its predecessors have allowed 6 of the 14 waterfront property owners in the community to build piers. The most recent of which was 3 houses away from me on the same street, and the pier was built just last spring. Last year, the county passed legislation that was enacted to provide certain protections to associations that own riparian rights, so disputes regarding the ownership of those rights could be resolved before construction was initiated. HB 1224 provides similar protections to private property owners that likewise own the riparian rights to their property. Specifically, the bill closes a gap whereby an association can effectively block a riparian owner as permitted by longstanding Maryland law to build a pier simply by refusing to provide written permission after the property owner has demonstrated that the property owner and not the association owns the rights, and they've obtained all the required approvals. I appreciate the time and ask for the delegation's favorable recommendation on HB 1224.
Mr. Huntley, thank you so much for your testimony. Are there any questions from members of the delegation? Delegate Henson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the bill sponsor. My question is for the bill sponsor. Homeowners associations, condo associations, they regulate a lot of things that are supposed to reflect the will of the community based on the bylaws that are adopted by the members and homeowners in the community. Can you help me understand how building a pier is different than anything else that's regulated by the association? For say, facade coloring, everything from mailboxes. I mean, it's a great number of things that the associations get into to keep conformity within the community. But I'm trying to understand why exempt out from that piers.
Well, I think you hit it when you said conformity. So takes, for instance, Gibson Island. Gibson Island owns the riparian rights through a corporation around all of it. So by conformity, you can't put a pier over on Gibson Island. So conformity means we are going to apply this equally to everybody. Well, when you say written permission, that's not equally, because as Mr. Huntley testified to, you have 8 homeowners that have piers and 6 that have been denied for whatever reason. And that can be applied arbitrarily or capriciously or in a nefarious way. So if it was conforming, then that's understandable. One neighborhood says we're not going to allow any of this, but now we've got a neighborhood or potential of some neighborhoods saying, well, you can do it and you can't do it. And that's what I'm trying to avoid by narrowly writing this. If you remember last year in environment and transportation, we had a couple of these bills, and one of them had to do with the what they call low impact lighting, that an HOA couldn't require you to ask for permission for low impact lighting, and it was passed. I don't remember all the details of that, but it was brought to us by ENT, and I think it was passed unanimously. And then there was something else to do with some of the basketball hoops. So if a HOA says you can't have basketball hoops on the street, well, that applies to everybody equally, and you got to have them in your driveway. And that's what we're seeking to do, is create that uniformity where everybody is treated equally.
So not equally by the HOA, just removing the standard there, and any involvement from the HOA in your mind creates a standard that can be applied across the board. Am I understanding that correct?
Correct, because when you say this board has to do it with written permission, then it leads to unequal treatment.
Okay, are there any other questions? Delegate Bagnall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I guess my concern with this bill as drafted is that it does supersede the HOA agreements that were established and that the communities had knowledge of before they moved into the properties. So is this something that wouldn't be confirmed by the court unless we made a legislative change that basically just allowed for the superseding of the HOA agreements?
For the delegation's knowledge, I did reach out to the Attorney General to get confirmation that this would be a legal move. We did, especially on a local level, and they said there was, and I can share that with everybody in the delegation. And I don't think, well, constitutionally and in codified law, the riparian rights would usurp an HOA anyhow, unless the HOA has that conformity part in there. It's the written permission part that we are focusing on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. If there are no other questions, we will move on to
Thank you,
Mayor
Mr. Chair.
Buckley. I'm sorry, was there another comment?
No, I said thank you, Mr. Chair.
Oh, absolutely. Mayor Buckley, are you still with us?
I sure am.
The floor is yours, sir.
Okay, well, I miss you guys. I'm looking forward to seeing you all in person next year. It used to be very intimidating coming in front of you, and I'm a little more comfortable with it these days. But we truly are looking forward to having everything back to normal next year. And thank you for all the work that you're doing in this tricky time. I'd like to first start by acknowledging your work and your support for the pilot for Annapolis, which has been very helpful in covering public safety and other budget items associated with being the state capital of Maryland. So we really, truly appreciate your continued support on that. Annapolis has unique needs and a great partnership with the state. Late last year, City Manager David Gerald and I met with Governor Hogan and submitted a list of projects, some of which got included in the budget he submitted. I'll mention some of those allocations as we work through Annapolis's priorities for 2023. You are here in town, so you know Annapolis is a small city of just 39,000 residents over 7 square miles, but we have big needs as a state capital. So let's dive into a few things that we're asking. Our first ask is for renovations for the Stanton Center. The Stanton Center is just around the corner from the State House. It was built to be the first high school for African Americans in Anne Arundel County. It has remained in use. It remained in use as a segregated school until 1960, when all county schools were integrated. It is on the National Registry of Historic Places and a designee. We ask your support for that. This is a very important asset to the community. It houses social services, workforce development, gymnasium, a computer lab, and it exists as a community resource for children and adults in the Clay Street community, primarily serving low-income households. The renovations are estimated at $600,000. We truly would appreciate your support on that. Next is the city dock plan. This next item is a problem solving that Annapolis is tackling. It is a kind of problem solving that can be a model for waterfront communities around our state. Annapolis City Dock has been the center of a working Chesapeake Bay waterfront for a better part of 3 centuries. The $1.2 million that is included in the governor's budget will help us with more than the $35 million of reimagining of the City Dock project. We will be raising City Dock. We'll be creating a beautiful dynamic space. It will have references to all the amazing history that has occurred in the city. And we think in partnership with National Park Service, with Historic Annapolis and with the U.S. Naval Academy, we are going to do something amazing to make this beautiful city, your state capital, even more beautiful. We see the potential to do winter programming there. We could potentially do an ice ring and a fire pit in the winter. We could, of course, do a green space in the summer. We could do big events on this space, and it would truly be transformative, and it would be a barrier against the thing that we all fear in our communities, and that is sea level rise. This effort, if it was in place, if it had been in place for Hurricane Isabel, it would have saved the historic district and all the businesses from the damage that we do. And it's not just about sea level rise. We all know what the catastrophic weather events are doing to our country and to our planet. So it's not just about the water warming up and rising. It's about what's happening at hurricane season, what's going to be pushed up the Chesapeake Bay. And so when we move forward and do this, then we have to work on the other 16 miles of coastline in the city, but we truly would appreciate your support on that. The third thing we're asking for, all of the cities in the country are having to create infrastructure that is alternative to roads, that is something we can bike on and walk on and run on. something that helps us with our micro transit, something that helps us get people to jobs, helps people recreate. It is a thing we call in the West East Express. It will connect the historic district all the way out to the county, to the Westfield Mall, to the hospital, to Waterworks Park and the South Shore Trails. We have resurfaced part of it on the Poplar Trail. If any of you know the Poplar Trail, we're looking to reimagine this 42-foot easement that runs parallel to West Street. It has been a dumping ground for a long time. The factories have been throwing tires over the fence. Some of the residents have been throwing sofas over the fence. It's 42 feet of forgotten property with a track on it. It was called Backtrack. We want to make it into something beautiful, something that will be the spine of our mobility plan for the city. We truly would appreciate your support for the we. We'd like your support to also underground the utility lines in the historic district. We all know we have a beautiful historic town, but we forgot one thing, that the power lines didn't look like that. They didn't have bundles of wire from cable companies. The visual pollution of power lines really takes away from the historic district. We truly would appreciate your support on that. And for any of you who have been out to Waterworks Park, it's a 600-acre property that the city owned. We got 12 miles of trails cut into that park with no cost to the taxpayer. We really opened it up to the public. It has an amazing old historic building in the middle of it, right next to the dam. We would truly appreciate some support to give that building, which is very old and very historic and has just been used for storage, to get the roof fixed, to get it in service and potentially turn it into something that a lot of people can come and visit. We'd also like your support for Truxton Park improvements. We have an amazing park in Truxton Park. We just renovated the pool, we've renovated the tennis courts, but we are looking to resurface the basketball courts. We all know how important parks and recreation have been to our communities. It's been the lifeline that we all needed through COVID. And for communities that didn't get access to recreation, there were very negative effects. We have a whole series of things that we need to improve and manage in Truxton Park. We're asking for your support on that. And lastly, I'm asking for your support in a plan that is called the 100% electric plan. And it is a plan that will take all the internal transportation that you get on that is provided by the city to be 100% electric. There are three things that we're doing. We're going to upgrade the circulator that goes from Park Place and that goes into the waterfront. And we're going to make that a 100% electric bus, kind of like the Quebec buses. We hope to eventually extend that 100% electric buses route to go to the stadium and also to the Grail so it can access a grocery store. And we're going to make that 100% electric. It will be a thing that you can all get on when you're here in the city. Within that, on Calvert Street, very close to where you all work,
Mayor Buckley, just a reminder, we've got about a minute before the bell rings and there may be a time for a question or two. So I'm going to ask you, sir, to please summarize.
Okay, 10-minute trolleys and then electric ferry, which we're trying to provide the first the first electric ferry that you can get 8 bikes on and 10 people plus the skipper. It will be called the 5th Street Ferry. It will be the first one of its kind in the country. It'll be a way to popularize public transport. And I'd love to sit down with any of you and talk more about it. Thank you.
Okay, are there any questions? And several members have told me that floor is not until 11. So that leaves an hour for questions. So do we have questions for the mayor? I'm scanning the chat to see if there are any questions for Mayor Buckley. Delegate Chisholm.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mayor Buckley, you know, you and I are not always on the same philosophical page, but I do greatly appreciate your vision. And I think you do have a great vision for what you want the Annapolis to look like. And I apologize if I missed it, but I think we were going to talk about the garage. Did you give an update on the garage and a timeline on when it'll start and when it'll finish?
Yeah, we break ground on the rebuild of the Hillman garage next month. So the garage will come down, and that's why this mobility plan is in front of you, the 100% electric plan, because we have the opportunity now to move some of the city workers out of the garage and park them remotely. But we have to, and then also tourists and people that use the garage, we have to create an efficient mechanism to move people around the city. So these things that I've talked about will get you around the city in 10-minute increments. But that garage will take 14 months. At the end of that 14 months, so next summer, we will start work on City Dock, and we'll start our work to raise City Dock and create the dynamic space that I'm asking you guys to be a part of. It will be a legacy for all of us. This is your state capital. This will be one of the most beautiful parks, I think, in the country. If we can get the ice skating component in there, it will be one of the most beautiful ice rinks in the country, with the water on one side and the romance of the Naval Academy on the other side, and of course the historic district behind it. So, but the garage is coming. It will come back bigger and better. It will be 125% stormwater retention. It will have solar panels, electric charging stations. You'll be able to program the ground floor and do markets there. You'll be able to program the rooftop for events, and it'll be funded through a P3. I'm a big believer in involving the private sector. I don't think government should pay for everything. We have to be creative on how we fund our future infrastructure needs. That P3 is going to mean that we can spin off a lot of money from that valuable asset to throw towards the redevelopment of City Dock. Two things are true. The garage is crumbling. It has concrete cancer. We've seen infrastructure collapse all throughout the country. It's on the news all the time. And then the water is coming, and we know what flooding looks like. You guys have all been stuck on the Eastport Bridge when the street is full of water. So we're excited about this project. Sorry, I'm excited and I keep talking too much. Thank you, Delegate Chisholm.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Right.
That's also why I brought the last bill, to stop some of this erosion.
All right, so next I see Vice Chair Bagnall, and again, to all my colleagues, I apologize to anyone who I may have given a heart attack to by saying that floor was at 10, Vice 11. Sometimes, you know, my efficiency gets ahead of me. So with that, Vice Chair Bagnall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question. I know that I share your passion for your vision for City Dock. Have you been communicating with the boating and yachting industry about ensuring that there is access for loading and unloading of equipment, materials, you know, even musicians' instruments, and how we will address that, and also make sure that there's ADA access for all of those boat tours, those lovely boat tours that are going to be happening in Annapolis.
Absolutely. It is shameful that in this city, the home of the U.S. Naval Academy, that we do not have ADA access to the waterfront. And so we are going to correct that with this renovation. We will have floating docks and ramps so that people can get onto boats and then get out to our new crab boating center, which we're very grateful that you have all supported. Another amazing asset on the waterways of Annapolis. So we will definitely do that. The space will be programmable. We'll have, be able to do concerts there. We're going to create kind of an amphitheater on the water. There's a potential to have concerts where boats could anchor off and watch the music from off the Spa Creek. And then on the electric ferry that I'm proposing in the 100% electric plan, which all this will be free because we've built in money to operate it for the first 14 months while the garage is in the contract of the people that are doing the garage. But we think it's going to give water access to people that might not be as lucky as some of us that don't have mum or dad with a boat or friends with a boat, but they can get on, they can roll their bike on, they can roll their wheelchair on to the ferry. The county has put in $250 for this 100% effort. We would appreciate you could help us in the same level as that. And then we could say that this is something that we've done together, that we have created a carbon neutral transportation system in the city, that we've encouraged people to get out of their cars as soon as possible when they come into the city of Annapolis, and that we can move them around in a way that is good for our bay and good for our environment.
Thank you so much.
Any other questions for Mayor Buckley? Seeing none, Mayor Buckley, I want to thank you for all of the updates. Certainly want to thank you for all the great things you're doing for the city of Annapolis. And anytime you want to get together at Carlson Donuts again, don't hesitate to reach out. We'll be happy to meet you there, or the small business of your choice, because we know that supporting our small businesses really help drive the economy locally and across the county, state, and country. So again, thank you for all the great work you're doing here in Annapolis, and look forward to seeing you around in the near future. So with that, are there any other matters of business for the delegation? Is there a move for adjournment?
Move to adjourn.
Is there a second? It's been moved and properly seconded. See everyone on the floor. Have a wonderful weekend, and see you